Okay, here is the opening chapter for The Ghost of Liberty, the secret key to 1776, designed to immediately hook an American audience with its blend of historical atmosphere, mystery, and espionage. The Ghost of Liberty, the secret key to 1776. Chapter 1. The Pressman and the Phantom. The smell of lead and cheap whiskey clung to Caleb Thorne like a second skin. It was a familiar scent, the aroma of a city slowly suffocating under the boot of an occupying army. New York, December 1776, was a grim parody of its former self, a hive of loyalist sycophants, desperate patriots, and the ever-present redcoats of His Majesty's 10th Regiment of Foot. For Caleb, a typesetter by trade, it was simply hell. And his particular hell was located in the stifling, ink-stained confines of Rivington's New York Gazetteer, a bastion of British propaganda. Tonight, the wind howled outside, a frigid, merciless beast tearing through the narrow streets, rattling the single pane of glass in the print shop's window. Inside, the roar of the press had ceased, leaving only the sporadic crackle of the wood-burning stove and the rhythmic scrape of Caleb's composing stick. His fingers, calloused and nimble, danced over the metal type, setting the words that would laud King George III and damn the rebel scum led by General Washington. It was a lie he set every night, a poison he helped spread, and with every letter, a piece of his soul chipped away. "Thorne, you still here?" A gruff voice barked from the doorway. Old man Rivington, his face a road map of broken veins and ill temper, peered in, a half-empty tankard of ale clutched in a fat hand. "Thought you'd be off to your den of iniquity by now. Don't tell me you're finding devotion to the crown in overtime." Caleb didn't look up, his gaze fixed on the minuscule pieces of lead. "Just finishing the amendments, Mr. Rivington. His Majesty's proclamation requires precision." The sarcasm was thin, almost imperceptible, a ghost of defiance only he would hear. Rivington grunted, satisfied. "Good. Loyalty, Thorne. It's what keeps men like us fed, eh? Not like those deluded fools freezing their arses off with Washington. They'll be hanged, every last one." He slammed the tankard down on a nearby table, splashing ale onto a fresh stack of broadsheets, then lumbered out, his heavy footsteps echoing down the hall. Caleb finally allowed himself a small, bitter smile. Rivington had no idea that every night, under the cover of ink and deceit, Caleb served a different master. As soon as Rivington's snoring became audible from his office, Caleb moved. His fingers, which had just meticulously set praises for the king, now moved with a new purpose, a desperate urgency. He slipped a small, folded piece of paper from his waistcoat pocket. It wasn't ordinary paper. It was a delicate sheet, barely larger than his thumb, made from the finest linen rag and impregnated with a peculiar, almost metallic scent. Under the dim glow of the oil lamp, he carefully unfolded it, revealing a series of seemingly innocuous numbers and letters. This was his real work, and tonight's message felt colder than the December wind. He dipped a thin, sharpened quill into a hidden compartment beneath his workstation, pulling out a vial of clear liquid. This wasn't ink. This was sympathetic ink, a mixture of gallic acid and iron sulfate, designed to vanish upon drying, only to reappear when treated with a specific developer, in this case, a light dusting of ash from his own stove. His heart thudded a frantic rhythm against his ribs. This was the most dangerous part of his night. If caught, it wasn't just a hanging. It would be a slow, agonizing death at the hands of Major John Andre, the British spymaster whose reputation for persuasion was legendary. Carefully, meticulously, Caleb began to transcribe the coded message onto the blank margins of a freshly printed Loyalist flyer. He wrote between the lines of King George's latest decree, blending his secret words with the enemy's public pronouncements. Agent 712 to Washington, intercepted dispatch from Cornwallis to Hoe,
Southern flank vulnerability confirmed. Requisitions for winter quarter supplies from local merchants being processed. Details attached. The details attached were numbers, troop movements, supply depots, names of loyalist sympathizers assisting the British quartermasters. Each number was a potential life saved, a battle turned, a step closer to the freedom he barely dared to dream of. As he finished the last digit, the sympathetic ink, true to its nature, faded, leaving only the printed words of the British proclamation. He folded the flyer, making a precise crease that would serve as a subtle mark for his contact. Just as he was about to hide it amongst a stack of outgoing newspapers, a sound sliced through the stillness of the shop. A faint, almost imperceptible scrape, like leather against stone. It wasn't Rivington. Rivington stomped. This was light, furtive. Caleb froze, his hand hovering over the stack. Every muscle in his body tensed. He slowly reached for the heavy lead composing stick, his only weapon, a grim anchor against the sudden terror. A shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness near the back entrance, a figure cloaked and hooded, moving with an unnatural silence. Caleb's breath hitched. This wasn't the British patrol, nor was it his usual contact from the Culper ring. This was something else, something ethereal. "Who's there?" Caleb's voice was a rough whisper, barely audible above the wind's shriek. The figure stepped further into the lamplight, and Caleb's blood ran cold. It was a man, or what appeared to be a man, but his features were obscured by a deep hood, and his cloak, though made of rough-spun wool, seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. His eyes, though shadowed, felt ancient, piercing, and in his gloved hand he held something small, metallic, glinting dully. "Agent 712. The figure's voice was a low rumble, devoid of any discernible accent, yet resonating with an odd, hollow echo. "You carry a burden heavier than most, a burden of history." Caleb's mind raced. How did he know his code name? Only Washington and a select few knew the identities within the Culper ring. Fear warred with a primal curiosity. "What do you want?" The cloaked figure extended his hand. In his palm rested a small, tarnished silver key. It was intricately crafted, unlike any Caleb had ever seen, with strange, angular teeth and a looped head. But it was the word etched on its surface that truly seized Caleb's attention, sending a chilling shiver down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold. The word was Croatoan. It was a word whispered in legends, a ghost story from a century past, the last vestige of the lost colony of Roanoke. A riddle etched onto a post on an abandoned island. What did it have to do with him, with Washington, with 1776? "This," the figure rumbled, his voice like dry leaves skittering across stone, "is not merely a key. It is the key to a vault of truths that predate this revolution. A truth General Washington desperately seeks, and one that the British and others would kill to bury." Caleb stared at the key, then back at the shadowed face. "What are you talking about? Roanoke? That's a myth." "Myths, Agent 712, the figure said, his head tilting slightly, "are often history forgotten. This key opens a path that leads to the true architect of this war and to the salvation or utter annihilation of this nascent nation." He stepped closer, and Caleb involuntarily recoiled, feeling an unnatural chill emanating from the man. Before Caleb could speak, before he could demand answers, the figure moved, not a walk, but a strange, fluid retreat into the shadows. One moment he was there, the silver key glinting in the lamplight. The next, he was gone, dissolved back into the oppressive darkness from which he had emerged. Only the faint, almost metallic scent lingered, and the cold, unyielding weight of the silver key, now resting impossibly on Caleb's workbench. Caleb stood paralyzed, his heart hammering against his ribs, his breath ragged. He stared at the empty space where the figure had been, then slowly, hesitantly, reached out and picked up the key. It was cold to the touch, impossibly old, and heavy with a history that felt alien and terrifyingly relevant. Croatoan. He clutched the key, the sympathetic ink message to Washington still drying on the propaganda flyer. The mole, the revolution, Roanoke, a secret older than America itself. Suddenly, Caleb Thorne, humble typesetter and secret agent, felt a chilling certainty. His mission had just changed. The war for independence was about to get far more complicated and infinitely more dangerous. The Ghost of Liberty, it seemed, had a very old key. This chapter sets up the core mystery and introduces the protagonist to the supernatural or ancient conspiracy element.